President Trump, thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much, Catherine.
Did the Attorney General make the right call, refusing to go to the House Judiciary Committee because he'd take questions from committee staff lawyers?
Well, I think so. It's not up to me, it's up to him, and they were going to treat him differently than they've treated other people. And of course, we've been treated differently to start off with. We've gone through so many investigations, everybody, and it's so ridiculous. No obstruction, no nothing. There's been no nothing. There's been no collusion. There never was. They knew that from day one.
Let me ask
he
you.
He should be treated the same way as other people are treated, and they're not doing that.
So he's not being treated fairly? Is that what you saw yesterday in the Senate?
No, not when they want to bring in people, outside people, to interview him, or other people on staff to interview. No, I mean, they're politicians. They're supposed to be good at doing it. And I don't know. I thought he was fantastic yesterday. He was very truthful, very straight up, a very solid person, great person. And I think that, no, they're not treating him fairly.
I want you to respond to some comments from the chairman of that committee, Jerry Nadler. He likened you to a, quote, dictator today, and he's threatened to hold the Attorney General in contempt.
Well, look, I have been probably a person that's given more to a so-called investigation than anybody ever in the history of this country. 1.4 million pages or documents. Hundreds of people have been interviewed. I've allowed lawyers to be interviewed. I didn't have to do any of it. I could have used presidential privilege, but I've been the most transparent president in history. I don't think anybody has been as open as I have. And you know, the reason I was because I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't do anything with Russia. So I said, give them all the documents you want, give them all the people you want. Somebody told me there was 500 people that were interviewed. I could have stopped all of it. I didn't do that. And now we win with Mueller, where they come up very strongly with no collusion and no obstruction, no nothing. We win very strongly. Now they want to do it all over again. Now we won in the House. We won in the Senate because Senator Burr said there's been no collusion, but we went through that. We won here. I mean, the Mueller report was a total win. But think of it. We go through this. This is 2.5 years now. I've been going through the same thing. And the guilt is on the other side. It's not on our side. The guilt is on the other side.
Are you saying the House committee should be satisfied with the findings in the Mueller report and they should not do independent oversight?
Well, I think they should be satisfied with the findings. They spent $35 million. Somebody told me today maybe $40 million on the Mueller report. They had 18 people, most of whom, I think all of whom, disliked Donald Trump. They were Democrats. They contributed to the campaign of Hillary Clinton. They had conflicts all over the place, and it still came out no collusion. I can't imagine they can keep doing this. This is done just to try and bring me down to, and I had my highest poll numbers today, which is, you have to explain that to me, because with all that we do, I had my best poll numbers. So yeah, I think they're treating us very unfairly. I think it's time to get down to business. I want to do infrastructure. I want to do prescription drug pricing, low. I want to do all the other things that we want to do. Nobody's done more. It's an incredible thing, Catherine. Nobody's done more than President Trump and this administration in 2.5 years, ever in their first 2.5 years. And despite that, I'm wasting time with all of this stuff. It is very unfair. And I think they're treating our Attorney General, who is a highly respected man, very unfairly.
Would you be comfortable if your Attorney General was held in contempt?
Well, I'd have to ask him. I really don't know. As far as I'm concerned, I don't know how you could do a thing like that. Again, we've been the most transparent in the history of this country. There's never been a president that has allowed them to take every document. I didn't have to give, you know the law better than anybody. I watch you all the time. I think you're terrific.
I've never been to law school, just so
you know.
Well,
that's good, but you know the law better than the lawyers, that I can say. But I didn't have to give all of this documentation. Probably in the end, I would have had to give none. I didn't have to give all these people to testify. I let them all do it because we did nothing wrong. I knew that. They found nothing with all of this. They spent $35 to $40 million. They found nothing. So yeah, I think we've been treated very unfairly. And they're doing it not for any legal reason. They're doing it for a political reason because they want to they want to win a race in 2020. And I see what they're up against today. I see where Biden put in a statement or a strong statement that China's not a big problem. Well, China's a big problem. We're losing $500 billion a year to China. There's a great hostility. China's a big problem. And when somebody says that, it shows they don't know what's happening.
Let me ask you on China. What's it going to take to close the deal with China?
Well, we are very close to a deal with China, but it's a question of whether or not I want to make it. I mean, we're going to make either a real deal or we're not going to make a deal at all. And if we don't make a deal, we're going to tariff China, and that'll be fine. Frankly, we'll make a lot of money. You know, you saw the deficit going down. You see the 3.2, which was highly, the GDP was 3.2 first quarter, always the worst quarter, and we had a tremendous first quarter. This country is doing well. This country is doing probably better economically than it's ever done before. We have the best unemployment numbers we've had in 51 years, soon to be historic.
Let me ask you, President Trump, where are you willing to give with the Chinese?
Well, look, I have a very good relationship with President Xi, but as I explained to him, I don't blame them because they ripped off our country and we allowed that to happen. I blame past presidents and representatives for allowing this to happen. Representatives of our country, why did they let this happen? Why are we losing $500 billion for years? $500 billion a year. We rebuilt China. They took advantage of us on trade like nobody in history has ever taken advantage of anyone. Now, we're making either a great deal or we won't make a deal at all. And if we don't make a deal at all, we'll use tariffs and we'll get back so much money, your head will spin.
Are you on track for a June White House meeting with the Chinese president?
I think it could happen. It depends where we are. I mean, we're, very far along on a deal.
Optimistic?
Intellectual property, theft. We're covering a lot of.
Are you optimistic about a June meeting?
I think we can probably do that. Yeah, I do. I think we can do that, Catherine.
I want to come back to the Attorney General because the House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, made a very serious charge today. She accused him of lying during his April testimony about his conversations with Mueller and Mueller's concerns. Should the Attorney General have volunteered to Congress during his April testimony that he had received the letter from Mueller and that Mueller had concerns about this notification to Congress in context?
Well, I know nothing about it. You're just telling me that for the first time. But I will say this, that we gave the entire report, 400 and some odd pages. So whether it was a little bit, down the road, which of course they want to be able to read it, they want to be able to see it. But any letter that was written or any statements that were made, we have been, I think they held back about 8%, and that's because they had a legal reason to hold back 8%. It was redacted, and even that I understand is not a big deal. But we gave the entire report.
Right.
So I don't think a letter makes any difference.
Maybe let me rephrase it.
Please.
Do you think the Attorney General should have been more forthcoming during his April testimony and volunteered to lawmakers that he had received a letter from Robert Mueller and that Robert Mueller had concerns?
I really don't know the subject. I really don't know what the complaint is. I think
his complaint is about the Attorney General's notification to Congress lacking context and really not effectively communicating the nature and the substance of the investigation.
Well, of the investigation or what was in the agreement? I mean, what was in the
What was
pages?
in the 4-page letter from the Attorney General?
Well, but the 4-page letter really was followed by 400 and some odd pages very shortly thereafter with very little redaction. So if you look at it, he was very open. Again, he was very transparent. We could have redacted, again, we could have redacted 90% of it. We didn't have to give it at all. It was my prerogative. I didn't have to give that 400-page document at all. I could have held it back. In fact, Rod Rosenstein wanted to hold it back. Others wanted to hold it back. People said, you don't really have to give it at all.
The deputy, excuse me for interrupting, the Deputy Attorney General?
I had heard that his recommendation, it wasn't like you have to or we can't, but we had the right. I had the right to hold back that document if I wanted to, or they did. They didn't do that. They gave the entire 400 and some odd page document. And that was made by the Attorney General and perhaps the deputy. But there were people that said you didn't have to do it at all. We gave it. So we were very transparent. I can't imagine Catherine being more transparent.
After everything that's happened today, under what circumstances would you allow the White House counsel, Don McGahn, to testify to Congress about the special counsel investigation?
Well, he's been testifying for so many hours, 30 hours. I allowed him to testify. Nobody else would do that. I did that because it wouldn't matter to me. He can say whatever he wants to say. I did nothing wrong. I knew that. And if I thought I did something wrong, I don't know what I'd do. I wouldn't have probably let anybody testify, but I let everybody Again, almost 500 people they interviewed.
So you're saying
There's never been anything like this. Now, they've already testified. I don't want to go through this. And what's going to happen when we're finished with the House? Then we're going to do another one with the Senate. Then we're going to do another one with somebody else. Look, I think what they should be focusing on is how did this mess start? How did this whole investigation start? Because I think it's corrupt as hell. And I think what's happened between Comey and McCabe and Brennan and all of these people and Strzok and his lover, Lisa Page, there's tremendous things that people want to find out. And they really want to find it out. And I hope they're going to.
Is there a timeline on when the public will see these Russia records declassified?
Yes, I'm going to be allowing declassification pretty soon. I didn't want to do it originally because I wanted to wait, because I know what they, I've seen the way they play. They play very dirty. So I decided to do it, and I'm going to be doing it very soon, far more than you would have even thought.
May, June, July?
No, soon. I mean,
Soon?
whenever they
Weeks?
need it. Whenever they need it, I'll be doing it. But I will be declassifying, yes, everything.
Director Comey wrote in the New York Times, he called you, quote, amoral, and that this has rubbed off on the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General.
Well, Comey leaks, and he lied. He lied in front of Congress. He was sworn testimony, classified information. I did a terrible job. Everybody wanted him fired. Everybody. Schumer, every Democrat, almost, every Republican, almost, probably 100%, but I say almost, just to say it so there's no mistake. But I read quotes from Schumer prior to my firing him. Everybody wanted him gone. He did a lousy job. He was a terrible director, terrible. There was dissension in the FBI.
Can I ask you a question, President Trump? Yeah. If you take Director Comey out of the equation and his actions in 2016 and 2017, would the country be where it is today?
I think that he did a terrible job. I would say he probably led some kind of an effort. The word spying has been used. He probably was one of the people leading the effort on spying. So
it's a very serious charge to make.
I know, and we'll find out whether or not it was true. And I think it could very well be true, but we're going to find out pretty soon.
On Venezuela, if Juan Guaido is detained or physically threatened, how will the U.S. respond?
Well, that won't be a good thing. That would be very unfortunate. He's actually a brave person, and because I know what he's going through. I'm speaking to our people all the time. He's a brave guy, and what's happening in Venezuela is sad. When you look at 20 years ago, it was one of the wealthiest countries in the world, if you think about it. And now they don't have food and they don't have water and people are dying from hunger. It's a very, very serious situation.
What are your red lines in Venezuela?
I don't want to say, but we have lots of options and some of them are very tough options.
Is there a tipping point for military intervention?
There's always a tipping point, but certainly I'd rather not do that. I just want to help the people. The people are dying. They have nothing. These were people that were living well 20 years ago. Catherine, they have nothing. They don't have water and food. And they're dying of hunger right on the border. It's terrible.
I want to talk about 2020.
Okay.
Have you told the Russian president to back off the 2020 election?
I don't think I've spoken to him about the 2020, but I certainly have told him you can't do what you're doing, and I don't believe they will be. I don't believe they will.
Have you been very firm with the Russian president on that point?
I think I have been. I think nobody's done more about Russia than I have. President Obama in September, before the November election, my November election, if you look, he was told by the FBI and others about Russia. He did nothing about it.
What could he have done?
Well, he could have done something. I mean, he could have called out the troops and he could have said, let's look at this very closely. He did absolutely nothing because he thought that crooked Hillary was going to win the election, and she didn't even come close. So it's just one of those things, and that had nothing to do, by the way, with Russia, because everybody said it didn't affect the vote. You've heard that many times, didn't affect the vote. But I don't want Russia or anybody else playing around with our elections.
Senator Graham said to CBS last weekend that he would support more sanctions, not less. What's your position?
On what?
On Russia.
Well, I think we've done a lot of sanctioning of Russia. I brought up the pipeline. I'm helping Ukraine far more than President Obama did. We're doing a lot of sanctions on Russia. I've signed a lot of sanctions on Russia. eventually we want to be able to get along with countries too. You have to remember that, whether it's Russia or China or anybody else. But again, nobody has been tougher on Russia than Donald Trump.
I want to ask you about politics.
Okay.
Another Democrat entered the race today. Is it Joe Biden's nomination to lose?
Who is the other Democrat that entered?
It was the Colorado Senator, I believe, Bennett.
You're not going to win.
Is it
I
Joe
think
Biden?
that Biden seems to have a lead. I'd be very happy if it were Biden.
Happy
Sleepy
why?
Joe. I think he did a bad job. I'd be running against
So
him
you
and
think he's
Obama.
beatable?
I just don't think he'd be a very good candidate. I mean, we'll see what happens. I hope, I wish him well. I'd like him to get it. I'd be happy. I'd be happy with Bernie. I personally think it's those two.
Between those two?
I think it's between those two. I don't see anybody else, but could be. You never know. Now, in my case,
Who would you rather face?
I announced, and I think I was pretty much right. I know I was at the top from the beginning. I think he is now leading. Bernie would be second. We'll see what happens.
Who would you rather face?
Oh, well, I don't want to say that to you, but I don't think it matters very much. I think we're going to do well. We have the strongest economy that we've ever had. We're doing phenomenally. We have the best unemployment numbers, African American, Asians, Hispanics, best numbers we've ever had. Women, the best in 61 years, unemployment numbers, job numbers, wealth numbers. We have the best numbers. I think we have the best economy we've ever had. And we have more people, Catherine, working right now than ever in the history of our country. So I don't know why somebody beats that.
I'd like you to comment on some statements the vice president made while he was campaigning in Iowa. He said China is, quote, not competition for us, for the U.S.
Everyone's competition. I view everybody as competition.
Is he
If
being
you look
naive
at-
about China?
Well, he is very naive about China. China, right now, we lose $500 billion. After I sign the deal, it won't be anything like that. China just, during the Obama years in particular, just took advantage of our country so badly. A very, very big competition, China, and I've stopped it, and I am stopping it. During the course of the last 2.5 years, we've gone up $17 trillion in value. China's gone down $17 trillion. China, as you know, has taken a very, very big hit because of the tariffs and everything else I've imposed. We'll see whether or not we have a deal. We have a very good chance to have a great deal. But for somebody to be so naive and say that China's not a problem, if Biden actually said that, that's a very dumb statement to make.
That's the quote, not competition for us.
It's a very foolish statement.
Should the former vice president explain himself on his dealings in Ukraine and whether there was a conflict?
I hear it's a very
with
serious
his son's
problem.
business interests?
Sure. I'm hearing it's a major scandal, major problem. Very bad things happened, and we'll see what that is. And they even have him on tape talking about it. They have Joe Biden on tape talking about the prosecutor, and I've seen that tape. A lot of people are talking about that tape. But that's up for them. They have to solve that problem.
You retweeted a story from the New York Times today
On what?
on Biden, the former vice president.
About that? About Ukraine? Yeah.
Ukraine, yeah.
No, I think it's a big problem for him.
Not fake news on that story.
Might not be. I hope for him it is fake news. I don't think it is.
I know that we want to wrap up, but I just have a few more questions,
Go
if
ahead,
that's,
real
if
quick.
that's okay. Thank you very much. I just want to be clear on Don McGahn. Under what circumstances would you allow him to testify to Congress about the special counsel investigation?
Well, I've had him testifying already for 30 hours.
So is the answer no?
And it's
to
really, so I don't think I can let him and then tell everybody else you can't, because especially him, because he was a counsel. So they've testified for many hours, all of them. Many
So as far as you're concerned, it's really,
it's a
it's
blanket.
kind of done.
I can't say,
it's done.
well, one can and the others can't.
So is it done?
I would say it's done. We've been through this. Nobody has ever done what I've done. I've given total transparency. It's never happened before like this.
So Congress should be.
They
Congress should
shouldn't be looking anymore. This is all. It's done. Even my finances, it must have been looked at for $35 million. I assume they looked at my taxes. I assume that Mueller looked at my financial statements for $35 million, and having 20 people plus 49 FBI agents and all of the staff and all of the money that was spent. I assume they looked at my taxes, which are fine. And I assume, except they are under audit, by the way, I will tell you that officially, because
Yeah, the New York Attorney General's coming at you pretty hard.
well, she campaigned on the fact that, oh, I'm going to get Trump, I'm going to get Trump. So right there, she's precluded from doing anything. I mean, can you imagine somebody campaigning, doesn't know anything about me, and she's campaigning on that fact? So I assume that for the $35 million, they've gone through everything. My taxes, my financial statements, which are phenomenal, they've gone through everything. And I'm so clean. Think of it. After 2.5 years and all of that money spent, nothing. Very few people could have sustained that.
I am getting the wrap-up signal, but if I could get a few more questions in.
I got to go, but we'll do
Okay,
another
yeah.
one.
Can I? All right.
I have that group waiting for me.
Yeah. Can I do just one final question? It's
Go ahead.
important.
One.
Okay. How did the Deputy Attorney General explain media reports that he discussed secretly recording you and invoking the 25th Amendment?
I don't know. I don't know what happened. I mean, that
Did
question.
he have a phone call with you about it? Did he explain it on Air Force One?
Honestly, I'd much rather have you ask him that question. It sounds a little bit far-fetched, frankly, but a lot of things in this case are far-fetched. But I got along with him, and I think that question you'd probably have to ask him.
Okay. Is there anything you want to add?
No, I think it's fine.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I hope we'll be able to
Thank you.
do it again.
Good.
Thank
We
you.
will do it again.
Yeah,
Okay?
good.
Thank you,
All right,
Catherine.
thank
I appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you.